Hi, this is Dr. Gayle MacBride, and I just wanted to thank you for getting all the way to the end of season 2. I hope you've enjoyed this season with all of our guests. We are busy working on season 3, so I want you to watch out for it to drop in early 2026. In the meantime, enjoy a mix of rerun episodes that have been curated for you by our intrepid host, Michael MacBride. These rerun episodes are a mix of the most listened to, the least listened to, and all of our guests. We're going to give them a repeat performance as well. So thank you for following along with us on this journey. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. This helps us get more listeners. And please, even though we are on a break, we are watching our mailbag. So thanks for listening and look forward to season 3 in 2026.
Well, hey there. You've stumbled upon the intersection of internet quandaries and psychological insight. Welcome to Veritas Views on AITA, where the quirks of the internet meet the expertise of Veritas Psychology Partners.
Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Michael MacBride, and I'm joined today by a trio of psychologists.
That's right. We have guests today. Hi, I'm Dr. Gayle MacBride, and as always, I'm Dan. I am joined. I don't know. I'm joined by Dr. Daniel Kessler, my business partner and friend. He is on my left on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. And more exciting, we are joined by my new friend and colleague, Dr. Sheena Sikorsky. She is a licensed psychologist who works in the Minneapolis area, but never has to leave her office to see people around the United States, as she has a side-packed endorsement with her license and works from a virtual office. She specializes in helping millennials and Gen Z women untangle themselves from the exhausting grip of perfectionism and people-pleasing. She addresses the inner critic that never should be louder than your gut instinct. Welcome, Sheena. We're so glad you're here today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Cool. Michael, what do you have for us?
A great introduction there.
Right? You know what? It might have been AI written based on the bio.
It may have been AI written. Wow, that was good. Thanks, ChatGPT.
Creative is tough.
That's exactly what I do. I mean, you nailed it.
There you go. Michael, sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, welcome all three of you. For any of the newbies out there, if they're not familiar, essentially what I've done is I've found a post on the internet where somebody has said, hey, this thing happened, and I want to know who's in the wrong, who's the asshole, and that's what we hope to determine. So the three of them will kind of kick the idea around, give some thoughts and ideas. Where there's been any kind of identifiable information in the post, I usually try to de-identify that, make it a little more discreet. And then, as always, or if you're new, I guess you should know, stick around through the credits. We always have some kind of bonus conversation, and I don't know what that'll be today, but we'll see. In truth, I have not told any three of these psychologists what they are going to be given today. So let's go. Today's prompt is, am I the asshole for wanting to take over planning my funeral from my very religious parents?
No.
Right? I mean,
yeah, we need to discuss this.
And thank you for making funeral plans ahead of time. That's really hard to do. It's just sometimes the nicest thing you can do.
Okay, and can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah.
Am I an asshole for taking over planning my funeral from my grandparents?
From my religious parents.
From my religious parents.
Okay.
Yeah, which will make more sense when,
Okay, go for it.
All right, so this is what we got. The situation is she is a 27-year-old woman, and she says, I'm a 27-year-old woman facing a terminal illness, and I've been grappling with how to handle my funeral arrangements. My parents are devoutly religious, and their vision for my funeral includes traditional hymns, scripture readings, and a formal graveside service. While I respect their beliefs, I envision my farewell differently, more of a celebration of life filled with laughter, shared stories, and perhaps even some unconventional elements that truly reflect who I am. My husband supports my wishes, but my parents are deeply distressed by the feeling that deviating from tradition would be disrespectful and detrimental to my soul's journey. This had led to a difficult sense of tension in our family, and I'm torn between honoring my own desires and alleviating my parents' anguish. I understand that funerals serve as a tribute to the departed as well as a source of comfort for the living. However, the thought of my final farewell not resonating with the person that I am and have been feels disheartening and dishonest. I've considered taking over the planning to ensure it aligns with my identity, but I'm concerned this might cause further emotional strain on my parents during an already painful time, as they have to say goodbye to me before they pass. Would I be wrong to prioritize my own vision for the funeral over their traditional expectations?
So really, this is a question of people pleasing. Sheena, this is your wheelhouse,
Yes. Oh my gosh, I feel for her.
right?
Oh, seriously, my heart breaks for her and the fact that she's even asking this question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
That her parents put her in a position to be having to ask this question is really unfortunate.
Hmm.
And I'm annoyed.
It's hard. Everyone here is having big feelings about the thing that shouldn't happen, right? Which is your child passing before you. I sometimes tell this story, and I'll take a brief moment to just relate it here. I was working with a woman, a young woman, who had recently lost her father, and just prior to that, I believe the grandfather. I might have the timing mixed up. And I went to her house to bring her a meal and comfort for her and her mom that I didn't know, and grandmother was living with them. And grandmother was originally from India, had moved here with her family, and was deeply supported by these two adult sons. And grandmother didn't speak a lick of English, but she knew who I was and what I did, and I had a professional relationship and a friendly relationship with this woman's granddaughter, and she got her granddaughter's attention, and she spoke to her, and asked me to ask a question, which is sort of interesting because culturally this woman wouldn't be someone who would avail herself of the use of a psychologist or a psychologist perspective, but she wanted mine, which was a deep honor. And one of the things that she said that like stuck with my heart was about she sort of expected her husband to pass, that these things happen, right? But it isn't the way for a mother to lose an adult child. You know, your children shouldn't pass before you. And I remember hearing that message that this isn't the way of things. And I thought, oh, my heart broke for this woman having lost her son, even though he was an adult and a father himself. It isn't the way of things.
hmm.
So,
Well, and the reality is like, why? uh, Yes, I totally agree.
yeah.
It sounds like it's some people pleasing going on here.
Mhm.
And the fact that she's even asking something like this, I want to know the background here. I want to better understand what the relationship dynamic has been like for much of her life that led her to even ask something like this.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
why are we
yeah,
talking about this if she's terminally ill?
Yeah. It feels a little like maybe the wrong thing to be focusing on. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
Exactly.
yeah. And it when someone takes over or wants to take over, I I don't. Yes, I first off, yeah, sure. The funeral is for the living people to say goodbye and to
Mhm.
process and all that. But let's honor this young woman in the way that she
Hmm.
wishes to be honored, and how I find myself annoyed. Like to me, like I'm going to respect the wishes of someone who's passing and processing their own passing in the way that's most meaningful to them. And I think she gets to play the it's my funeral. I get to pick it the way it goes. I think that's up to her to make that decision. Um, I'm disappointed by the parents here quite a bit,
So
and maybe I'm
I
jumping too far down the
totally,
path without the proper processing here. But I can't. I'd be annoyed
you're
if
annoyed.
I'd be annoyed. I'd be
Yeah.
annoyed if I knew of my passing ahead of time, and I'm like, this is the funeral I want. And people are like, nah, that's not what you're getting. We're gonna do it our way. 'Cause it's more meaningful to us. I'm like,
Right.
no.
Imagine. So she
That's
alludes to being
what it
married, right? She had a wedding to plan, and I'm guessing the parents had some strong opinions about that, right? Like maybe let's put the event aside for a moment because we are, I think, all in agreement that planning your funeral and having a say in that is important. But Sheena, you ask a really interesting question, which are what are the family dynamics of this 27 years that lead you here? Say more.
Yeah, I mean, I want to know because if we're thinking about it from the lens of people pleasing, a lot of times where that comes from is we don't start out as people pleasers, we start out as parent pleasers,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get our parents to understand us, to see us, and to connect or attune to have them attuned to our needs. And I wonder if there's been a lot of misattunement that's happened over the course of time that has led her here to even doubt herself, to question her needs because
Mm-hmm.
of the misattunement that's happened
Mm-hmm.
potentially throughout her. I wonder about that.
And so do you, if someone like this shows up in your office, do you have those conversations to help them understand how this pattern has developed and maybe untangle
Absolutely.
that? Mm-hmm.
Yes, that is such a big part of what I do. A lot of times clients come into a lot of clients that I have, they are very insightful. They already understand that they're people pleasers or they're struggling with perfectionism, but they don't necessarily understand where that comes from. And so, yeah, we do map out. I talk a lot about the way that they grow up and how that can influence their ability to stand up for themselves and trust themselves enough to be able to make decisions that they feel confident in making. But so many of them come in doubting themselves and their needs and not trusting their intuition.
Mm-hmm. How interesting. So,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, Dan. I
No, no, no,
cooperatively
no,
overlapped with you. Go ahead.
no. No. It's all right. It's okay. It's all good. It's okay. I continue talking amongst yourselves.
No, please.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so just having her ask a question like this that seems so apparent to all of us makes
Mm-hmm.
me wonder why is she even doubting something like this?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that's my question.
Right,
Yeah.
because she has had enough emotional distress about this. She's posting this online and saying, am I the asshole here?" So we've got
Oh,
these parents getting her to question herself, like you said, and that gut instinct of this is what I want. I know me, I know who I am, and I want this to represent me. Oh, but maybe I shouldn't do that.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. Oh, it's heartbreaking. And that happens a lot with religion too, kind of this fight between what I want, what my values are now,
Mhm.
and what I grew up valuing or what I was taught to believe. And so I wonder about that religious piece too. And I don't particularly work with a lot of, religious trauma necessarily, but I guess I that's kind of where my mind goes to. I'm not sure if you guys work much with religious trauma or I've seen how that shows up for people, but that can also, I think, lead to some people really questioning
Yeah.
themselves.
So when it comes to religion and religious faith, people can get caught in this right and wrong. And
Hmm.
I really see the value of faith and religion in bringing people together. And this is one of those opportunities that's missed because instead of their faith bringing them together, it's pulling them apart.
Mhm.
And
That's a great
when
way to say that. Yeah.
yeah, and when your faith is pulling you away from your children or your faith is pulling you away from others, I think there's an opportunity to think like, how is this helping me and my family? But we get caught in this, well, my faith says it's right, so it's right. And we miss sometimes that other people's experiences and other people's expressions of faith are different.
Hmm.
And this is one of those really unfortunate situations where the difference in their faiths isn't being honored. If someone else's faith is different than mine, um, and this gets into a whole lot of political stuff but like I have the right to practice my faith, but I don't believe that I have the right to enforce my faith upon anyone else.
Hmm. There's no
And
curiosity there. The parents, it doesn't,
yeah,
I, the parents don't seem to be curious about understanding where she's coming from, at least based on, Michael, what you shared with us.
I was going to
Where's
say,
the
let me.
curiosity and compassion?
right. They could have been like, okay, this is our faith and this is going to be hard for us, but we're going to honor your faith perspective
Mhm.
and not be demanding that you follow our faith perspective. And people do get very caught up in this, but it's right and wrong. And
Let me jump in real quick and add something. So one of the things that drew me to this post was not only just like imagining trying to go through this dilemma of like I am going to die before my parents do, and I have all these things to deal with, and then this baggage was also the original poster's engagement. I mean, a lot of times we don't get a lot of back and forth.
Mm,
I think she answered every question that came in. So there
Wow.
were lots of
Oh
things
my
like, tell
gosh.
us about this and tell us about that. And, like, so some of her ideas for a funeral involved, the, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like the nature burial where it's like out in a wooded area or something like that, where you're intentionally like return to nature in a way so that you can nourish a tree or that kind
mhm.
of thing. And, and they asked her about things like, you're 27. You've clearly had time to separate from your parents, living under their roof and their rules. How has that gone? And she's talked about like they've had those conversations about differences. And and one of the questions they asked her was, have you considered doing both? You know, having a party or something beforehand to kind of honor your life, maybe even before you pass, and then one where the parents kind of get their thing. And so I was really struck by like, how do you navigate that thing where everybody has kind of the best of intentions, but very different ideas about how to go about it. I don't know if you have any thoughts on any of those things, but I thought I'd throw those out there.
One of the
Mhm.
things that strikes me in that question then is who is financially responsible for this? I mean, burials and funerals can be incredibly expensive. Green burials can be very expensive as compared to the way we traditionally handle this. And so if the parents have any financial input, are they feeling as though they have more say so over what happens here? Or is the impending terminal illness and eventual death? Is she being able to kind of create this on her own financially and has saved for it, right? Then that ownership lies with her. And my gut instinct to what you said, Michael, is if the parents really want something that is a send off in a spiritual way, then we really can't stop them, but it doesn't have to be a part of her plan. And they can do this on their own, right? She can't stop them like that can still be a thing, but she should still be able to listen to what she wants, what feels right, that allows her to know that she can transition with this illness and into death on her terms. I mean, she is doing this on her terms. I would love for her to be able to do that, and I don't need to rob the parents, but the parents don't need to insert that into what she is creating for herself.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree. And even like just thinking too, as someone, 27-year-old with a terminal illness, I mean, so much a part of that is how to create meaning. How can I, what does that meaning look like for me? What's the legacy that I can leave behind? How do I want people to remember me? And I wonder if, the type of ceremony or, burial service that she wants is connected back to how she wants people to remember her and the meaning that she wants to create for herself, even when she's no longer here.
Yeah, I think you're so right. When you have a terminal illness this young, you've thought about a lot of really
Oh,
Hmm.
deep, hard topics, and you've had to digest a lot of tough information. So I'm sure, yeah, that's been certainly a part of this lady's journey. It has to have been.
yeah.
Yeah, and she had the opportunity, and I'm going to take us on a left turn here. I May of 2001. Probably the very first thing I ever watched on a live stream on a dial-up connection was the funeral of Douglas Adams. And Douglas Adams wrote the Hitchhiker's Guide trilogy. He called it a trilogy. It was 6 books in the end, but it was a trilogy. And he also wrote very famously at the time about his own atheism and talked about how he had his line that he wrote in some of his essays was, "I am not an atheist because I don't believe, and there's not a God." He wrote, I am an atheist because I have become convinced by all available evidence that there's not a God." Then he said a whole bunch of other things that were even stronger worded than that. And I remember being very sad at his abrupt, untimely death at age 49. He just dropped out on a basketball court. And it was a terrible, awful thing. So, but the story, I'm watching his funeral being live streamed in a shaky dial up, and it's in a church and it's intensely religious. And I remember wondering whether, And I've wondered this for 25 years now, whether Douglas Adams himself, were he able to be at his funeral, would have just been really, really pissed off by the whole thing. And what he would have written about it had he known that he was passing so abruptly and untimely. And I've often thought, gosh, it would have been great if he'd had a chance. Like, if I've actually given myself that thought experiment, like, how would Adams have written his own funeral? Would he have done this? And this brings us back to this. She's this young woman who wants to write her own funeral and wants to create her own passing. And um, I'm struggling with feeling really kind of really, really very annoyed at the parents who are not allowing this young woman to have this very meaningful thing for herself. And I'm
But
like,
it's interesting, Dan. It goes back to the funerals are for the living. So where is that line?
I don't care.
You don't care.
In this particular case, while
Yeah.
funerals are for the living, this is a way for her. The planning of the funeral, though, is part of her transition. It's part of her coming to grips with her own passing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, that is really meaningful to be able to do that and to have that taken from her as she's having her life taken from her at this incredibly young age seems cruel to me.
Okay. Thank you for reconciling that because I think that's a hard intersection to be,
Mhm.
funerals are for the living, and yet we do now, culturally at least, allow people to choose their hymns and, readings. And I mean, we recently, last year and a half or so, went through a loss of an elder family person, and she had it planned out to the bagpipe you know song that she wanted played, and that's acceptable, right? Like we're cool with that. But when it takes I'll steal the phrase from Dan, a left turn into something that doesn't square with maybe a faith or religious view, then we start to put the brakes on and call it out and say you can't do that. And I agree. I'm annoyed at the parents for making this a thing. Do you want to transition something in a faith way because you raised your daughter in a faith, and you want to keep that? I think you can keep it. Keep it to yourself. Do it for you. Do it for you. You don't have to impose this on your daughter and create a point of distress when she's already dealing with so much.
Hmm.
Let- let-
I,
oh, go ahead, Sheena.
I
Sorry.
was going to just say too, like I sometimes ask the question to my clients, like, what do you want to remember about this time 5 years from now or 10 years
Mm,
from now?
Mhm.
You know, said. And that question came to mind as you were talking. It's like, how do the parents want to remember this time? Do they want to remember this time arguing and, having this disagreement? Or do they want to remember this time by being able to come together and connect and share memories? Yeah, I would want to, if I had the parents in my, I don't work with couples or families or anything, but I would want to ask that question.
Sure, but if the mom presented and said, "Oh, I'm so distressed. Here's my 27-year-old daughter. She's dying. She's not, she's recklessly planning her funeral. Her soul's not going to heaven or whatever it is. I really want her to do this differently." You're saying your question to mom would be, "Okay, but how do you want to remember this time? What's meaningful to you in terms of spending the
Absolutely.
time with the daughter now while you can?"
yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that's a great question.
And I think that sometimes takes us out of that black and white thinking, if that is kind of what's going on, and gets
Mhm.
us to refocus our energy on the things that are actually like most important to us.
yeah.
Yeah.
People, the allowing our judgments to become clouded by the depth of emotion that everyone here is experiencing
Oh, for sure.
is unfortunate. And they have an opportunity to plan this thing together and to sit down and experience some joy. I mean, sometimes we can experience some joy around remembering and planning, and there's an opportunity here they're missing out on.
hmm
Let-
Yeah, it's
But
that again
I'm
at both and. It is both terribly sorrowful and an opportunity to celebrate.
yeah, yeah.
Act.
I'm still if we're going to answer the question asked,
hmm
no, you're not the
Of
asshole,
course. No. Oh my
but
goodness,
your
no.
parents are. That just I think maybe they're not assholes. Maybe I should say
Overly emotional.
they're
Yeah.
getting caught up in their emotions. They're not allowing themselves to see what's really important here.
Yeah.
But then again, I don't have the faith they have, and maybe from the perspective of their faith, that their daughter's eternal soul is the most important thing. But
They are
Well, can
being
we?
I'm
deeply
struggling with it.
protective for sure from
What
that
what if
perspective.
we? what if we remove the funeral situation and all of the context and really dig into the one question, like when you have a fundamental disagreement between a child and parent, and I'm really struck by that struggle of like how you find a way to navigate that conversation to remain firm on whatever the topic is, but be kind in that conversation and, continue to foster a relationship. It's some of these things, a lot of times on the internet, it's like, well, just forget about them, go your own way. And like, I mean, this is kind of that opportunity, right? Like literally she's terminally ill, so she can go her own way and not deal with the consequences. But that's not always the case. There are so many scenarios where you want to keep that relationship whole and together, and yet also stand in defiance to be your own person. And anyway, that's kind of what I'm curious
No,
if you guys
it's
could
a
weigh
good
in on that.
question, Michael. And I certainly end up working with a lot of parents sometimes, I mean, older parents my age who are dealing with who have millennial children or have different perspectives, and they sometimes they get the feedback or advice from friends. Just cut them off. Just get them out. Or younger people get that advice from friends. Just cut your parents out. They're toxic. They're bad for you. They cut them out. And like sometimes we want to find the and instead of the like. And how do we maintain the friendship and the relationship and the connection we can while accepting that there are differences between us rather than having these sort of like cut and dried cutting them off kind of conversations which are often not now. I do work with millennials, but most of this is I'm working with the parents. And Sheena, I'm wondering from your perspective, like how you navigate this challenge like when there's the do I cut my parents out or not kind of conversations.
Hmm. I totally agree. It's definitely, well, maybe in certain circumstances it might be like
Hmm.
cut them out for maybe temporarily, especially if there's any sort of abuse happening potentially. But otherwise, yeah, I really like to go back. I do a lot of values work with clients, and that's super helpful, I think, with people pleasing and perfectionism, because a lot of times people can get into the people who identify as people pleasers and perfectionists can really get into that black and white thinking of like, I'm good or I'm bad, I'm right or I'm wrong.
Mhm.
Um, and with perfectionism, especially, that can sometimes come out in our relationships too. And so doing that values work helps to get out of that back and forth of, is this right or wrong? And more so focusing on like, what's actually important to you here, especially in the context of the relationship. Um, and so more often than not, when we kind of, calm the defenses, regulate the nervous system, and they're able to connect back to their values, it usually is, okay, what can I do to actually make this relationship work? And so much of it, um, you know, is curiosity. I think curiosity is so valuable, and being able to hear the other person's side and understand and have empathy and put ourselves in someone else's shoes and see where they're coming from. Because oftentimes with our defenses, especially for blaming people or um, getting really big or small, it's because we're trying to regulate ourselves. So when we put that aside and focus more on like what's actually important to us, I think it helps with getting out of the that black and white thinking and focusing more on like let's find a way to make this work so I can both, like you were saying, Dan, I think is like having our own opinions and also being okay with recognizing that there are going to be differences, you know?
Can I challenge you a little bit? I'm going to throw you a bit of a curveball, and
Yeah.
it's hard, right? Because that sounds awesome. I love this. And
Hmm.
sometimes the response is, but that's not fair. Isn't that just more people pleasing if I'm just trying to find this like neutral middle ground and be okay with who I am and allow them to behave this way? They're not doing anything. They're not growing. They're not changing. They're not allowing.
Yeah.
How do you work with that? Because that comes
Yeah.
up, right?
Oh, for sure. And I think it probably depends on the context, honestly. Of course, obviously, if there are things that are happening, like, we talk about how to stand, how I teach them how to like stand up for themselves. You know, assertiveness tools and whatnot. So absolutely. Yeah. I think it depends.
Sure.
Yeah. I totally agree with you though. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. And sometimes my answer is just, I know that's really tough. And this
Hmm.
is one of those times where, you're going to walk this ground and it's going to feel a little bit lonely, but it fits with your values because, maintaining this relationship with your family is part of that value system. And so when we look at that system overall, that's what we're really leaning into here. And we're doing that regardless of whether or not anyone else is changing. You're doing it for you, not for
Yeah.
them. And that's the difference, I think, for me, for
Uh,
people pleasing, right? Is
I
self-pleasing.
totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah. It's having that, working on that self-respect, right? Being able to
Mhm.
acknowledge when someone is actually hurting us and addressing it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I sometimes even say, are you going to be comfortable laying your head on the pillow at night with this decision?
Hmm.
And if the answer is yes, great. Has it attended to all your values? Is this really, ticking all of those boxes of what's important to you?
Yeah.
So trying to make that value system really narrow, I think is helpful too, right? We've got a lot of values and they sometimes compete, but we can kind of see where they rank in importance a little bit and then make some decisions about which one we're putting forward and which one we're really stepping on the accelerator with because it rises to the top, as it were, a little more often or a little more intensively. So
Yeah. I just, in the context of people pleasing too, I think helping people be able to sit with that discomfort when they do
Mhm.
yeah.
actually speak up for themselves
Hmm.
is something I think that there can be a lot of avoidance there. So I think just really working on that as well. Of like, nope, just because he might feel uncomfortable or maybe this big guilt because you were kind of taught to feel that way doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing anything wrong either. So,
Yeah.
and in fact, when we start to go outside our comfort zone and start speaking up for ourselves and turning up the intensity on actually advocating, we
Hmm.
are inevitably going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to be anxiety provoking. So I think that's another piece of it too, is like working on, you know, not just like ending the relationship, but finding a way to, okay, have that compromise and also recognize that when you do speak up, it's gonna be
It's gonna be
unsettling.
We
tough,
Yeah.
right?
we are going to, in all of our relationships, we're going to disappoint the person we're in a relationship with in some way.
Mhm.
Whether it's a marriage or a parent-child relationship or a friendship, we're going to at times disappoint the other person in the relationship, and it's okay to talk
Mhm.
about that and to shine a light on that sometimes, and not that we should do so intentionally, but sometimes we're going to disappoint people because we're different people. Um, and I love what you said there about sitting with that discomfort, Sheena. There's the
Mhm.
like you can doesn't mean that you're a bad person, that you're doing something wrong. It means that
Right.
you're standing up for what you believe is correct, or you're having a difference of opinion about something, and that may disappoint that person. And I'm sure that mom and dad are disappointed that their daughter has lost the faith that is so near and dear to them, and that doesn't mean that they get to reinforce that on her,
Mhm.
or that they should, but also doesn't mean that they shouldn't not mind. Shouldn't not mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um. Yeah. Did we ever render a verdict on this one?
We're
I
sort
think we
of.
started to, but
Yeah.
Sheena, what's your verdict? What do you think?
She's not the asshole. Absolutely
No.
not. No, I do not.
Parents?
No.
What about her parents? Are they assholes in this case?
I'm gonna have to go with you, Dan. Yes, I do think so. I mean, well, okay, maybe
With
not
discomfort, I
asshole.
see. I see the discomfort on your face there,
Well,
Sheena.
yeah, only because, I think that going back to your point, Dan, I agree. There's a lot of emotion here, and I
Mhm.
think the emotion is really clouding it. So are they assholes, I suppose, for the context of this? Sure, but I think it's really that their emotions are really overwhelming them, understandably so.
You're giving them a bit of a, like, you're giving some mitigating circumstances here.
But they are.
Maybe they're not assholes. The behavior is out of line. But you're not okay with it because
No,
they're enforcing their belief systems on their daughter in
Yeah.
that situation in a way that's harmful to her.
that is not okay. No, that's assholish behavior to me.
There you go.
I love it. I would agree with you guys. She is not the asshole as posted. She is not the asshole. Parents, we do have, I think universally here, unanimously, we agree that behaviors are problematic, and whether they are asshole behaviors or even just sucky behaviors, it's certainly somewhere in there, and it's driven by their own hurt and their own fear. And this isn't the time or place for that. This right now is the time to attend to the relationship and the daughter. So I think that's where we all
I
converge
think
on the problem with the behavior of the parents.
while I was very quick to jump in and call and say their behavior is assholeish, I also like it is still driven by their genuine desire and their faith that it's important for their daughter's like soul and eternal soul to have this sort of a ceremony, and they're doing this out of love and caring.
Hmm.
While I believe it's deeply misguided and problematic, I still want to get to the underlying cause of their action is their love for her and their desire for her to live on as their faith would say is necessary.
Yeah.
So like I'm giving that little bit of mitigation. I'm still pissed at them. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, and just because
Mhm.
she's
They're still
having
wrong,
uncomfortable feelings about this doesn't mean she's done something wrong, right? That's
right?
her old signal for guilt, as opposed to, standing her ground and doing something outside of her comfort
Yeah.
zone, which is, asserting her
Mhm.
opinion.
Michael, what'd the internet say?
Oh man. So the internet,
I could
is
only imagine.
not always the kindest and gentlest place, but this was one where the internet really came through. They
Oh,
really rallied around, like, I don't think anybody said like fuck the parents, like do your own thing. Like there
Mm.
wasn't that response. And in fact, the overwhelming decision here was there are no assholes here. That
mm.
everybody is really trying and struggling. And I have a side podcast that maybe I haven't told Gail and Dan about, but I meet with writers and we talk about books and that kind of stuff. And in there, one of the
Michael has a
conversations,
secret podcast.
Good for me. I don't know why he's calling this a side podcast
I
I
know,
don't
I was
know
just
about.
kidding,
I sort of know,
but
but go on, dear.
I talked with two older men. They're both in their early 80s, and they both had lost their wives, and they said the they were talking about grief, and one of the things they said was by the time I had actually lost my wife, because they both had terminal illnesses, um, they had already kind of grieved, and like so there was like this pre-grieving, and so I know grief makes people do weird things, and I imagine both of these people in this scenario here are dealing with this like pre-grief, right? Like the parents are going through that process of like realizing like their daughter is leaving them, and they're really struggling with that, and the internet kind of picked up on that and really talked, like tried to not defend the parents, but explain their actions in a way to the poster that was really kind of unexpected. Usually they're much more divisive on the internet and harsh and whatever. There were some really interesting kind of conversations in there about, ways that her she can live on in the way that she kind of wants to. And so like some of the internet people said, I'm going to name my cat after you. And there was several people were gonna make little avatars of her online and that kind of stuff, and it was just kind of sweet in a way I had not anticipated. So
Mm. Oh, Michael's got the
um,
feels.
I know, yeah. And then there
Okay.
was a contingent that said, "You're not the asshole. Like it's your life. You need to stand up for what you believe and what you want,
Mhm.
and the living have to kind of figure out how to do with that." And I kind of thought about some of those bigger, scenarios where you have that disagreement with a family member, or Dan, like you are fond of saying, which is accurate, that you're going to disappoint somebody that you're in a relationship with, kind of regardless of who that is, and then how you recover from that. So yeah, it was kind of a touchy feely kind of comment section in an
Mm.
Mm.
unexpected way. So
Makes me happy. Usually the internet is like fuck all, like parents
Yeah, they
are,
can be brutal. Those can
and
be brutal areas
I'm
out there.
so lovely that they came through.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and
I
in a
would
weird
just,
way. Oh,
oh,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. As a psychologist, I am going to take one exception, which is I understand this idea of sort of pre-grieving, but I don't think I have ever met someone that said, by the time they're done, I'm done grieving. It's just that grief changes when they're gone. after a prolonged illness. It isn't done. I don't think I've not met that person, and I actually would argue that your 50% of your podcast guests on that particular issue. I would think, if we really dived into this, we would see that grief wasn't done. It just shifted. It just changed. But
Yeah.
Yeah. There's an image that I've seen online that I will sometimes show people who are experiencing grief, and it's basically just two jars side by side.
Mhm.
One jar is smaller and the other jar is larger, and there's the ball of grief. I'm not sure if either of you have seen this,
I do ball
but
in a box, but the box
yeah,
the size
and that's another
depends
one.
on
Yes,
how
exactly.
often the ball hits the side.
Absolutely, yes. And yeah, I show that too. But basically,
Huh.
the idea is that like the grief is still there, it's the same size, but as we continue to live our lives and have more experiences around
Mhm.
after, we lose something or someone, it might not necessarily be as impactful as it was, but it doesn't mean it's not there. It doesn't mean that it, in the concept of like the ball in the box,
Mhm.
still will hurt us.
Mhm.
We'll experience that grief sometimes, but maybe
Mhm.
not in different ways than we used to. Yeah.
So in this image, you are saying that the size of the container changes, and often when I describe this, the size of the ball changes. It's just interesting to think about
Oh,
in different ways, right? So the ball shrinks, but it's always with you. The container's the same. You're saying with life experiences, your container expands and changes sizes, but the ball does not. Oh, yeah,
right.
interesting.
Yeah.
Take whichever model resonates most.
There you go.
I love that visual. But well,
Cool.
thank you all three for another riveting debate and a glimpse of the collective conscience of the internet forums. Remember, as Sheena pointed out, life and morality is not just black or white; it's often a shade of gray.
And if this gave you the feels, you're not alone, guys. Thanks for having a tough conversation.
Please follow and share Veritas Views, any of the podcast platforms with your neighbors and friends. And as always, stick around through the credits for the bonus conversation about, I don't know, I'm not sure what they're going to ask.
You can follow Dr. Dan Kessler at Dr. Dan Kessler and Dr. Gayle MacBride at Dr. G. MacBride. Oh, and you can find them both at veritaspp.com. Credits. Tickling the Ivories, Matthew Reddington. Art, production, and design, bringing this show together with flair and finesse, Michelle Love. Recording and editing, turning chaos into something worth sharing, Michael McBride. Intro, outro, I'm Kelly Buttrick, a VO talent who just happens to be Dr. McBride's cousin. Cats, CJ, Linus, Sadie, and Griffin. Hosting by whomever lost the coin flip. Interruptions by all their children. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Listening to this podcast does not constitute a therapist-client relationship. If you believe you may be experiencing a mental health issue, please seek the assistance of a qualified mental health professional. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, you can call or text 988 from anywhere in the U.S. to be connected to Crisis Mental Health Services.
Thanks for listening. As promised, here's that bonus conversation.
Okay, I think we go back to the oldie but goodie, right, Dan?
Sure, absolutely. Fire away.
He doesn't know what I'm talking about.
I do. I have a general idea of what you're talking about.
Sheena, when we first started this podcast, we entertained others, ourselves, whatever, with an object in the therapist's office that had some sort of meaning, whether that was psychological or not. I'm going to ask you, your background's blurry, so I can't see, so I can't actually pick something. I'm going to ask you to pick something in your office that has a story attached or some meaning that you'd like to tell us about.
Oh, well, I often work from home, so typically my one of my cats is like my co-therapist, and he often sits in my lap. He's not here. I almost actually grabbed him. He's currently laying on a pile of laundry on our dining room table and enjoying himself a little cat nap. But I would say him. His name is Gus.
Oh,
A lot of
oh,
my clients know him.
oh, that's awesome. How old is Gus?
He is 7.
Oh,
Yeah. He's
nice.
yeah, he's a very quirky little guy. He's
It's
got
it's
quite
it's
a personality.
I'm just astonished at how many cats I have met as a
Mhm.
therapist since going to online. Like the dog, sometimes you hear the person talk to the dog, but the cat usually see like this, like,
Just a little tail, just
across the across the camera, and it's like, that's my cat. I'm like, yeah. They're like, I'm really sorry. I'm like, no, 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 no. We need everyone's
Oh,
cats in this.
it's so funny.
Mine
I
are
was actually,
mine can't get in the office because my door is closed. So they would
oh,
be here.
Yeah.
uh-huh. It was funny actually just yesterday. I was like reflecting on, wow, it's so interesting working seeing people virtually because I'm like going through in my head, wow, I know all of my clients' animals, pets names.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny.
Hmm.
Like, oh,
Yep.
there's so and so again. Okay, hey. It's a
Yep.
nice way to connect,
It is.
especially.
I think sometimes it can humanize us. I've had clients where my cats have come and go through, if they're gonna nap or otherwise sort of be quiet in here, I'll let them stay. But if they're climbing around on the keyboard and pawing at stuff, I usually invite them to leave. But I have had clients, see my cat in the background and that made the decision that's who I want as a therapist because I connect that you have a pet and that humanizes us very, very quickly and rightly or wrongly, but it's funny. You call Gus your co-therapist. I often will tell people, if one of my cats wakes up from a nap and starts being a little rowdy, like, excuse me, I'm just going to excuse my co-therapist here. So I often refer to them
Mhm.
as as co-therapist or furry co-therapist too.
Send all the proper, paperwork to keep
Oh,
everyone's privacy. Yeah,
right.
All the HIPAA stuff. Yeah, it's
that's
important.
right.
Yes. Well, my cats are very good at confidentiality. They have not said one word about anybody's business.
And the great thing is they would, if they could speak, they wouldn't because they wouldn't care.
They wouldn't care.
Yeah. All
That's
right, take us
true.
out, Michael.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, I mean, honestly, as a non-psychologist, I enjoy the Zoom environment also with the people I work with because I would never have seen their homes. I mean, they live all around the countryside. So it's an interesting opportunity to connect on a personal level that way as well. And yes, our cats are very HIPAA compliant. So but thanks everyone for tuning in. Tune in next week for a whole nother Am I the Asshole debate.
We love hearing from you, so please review us on Apple, Spotify, or, well, wherever you're listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please review, like, and follow. Also, give it a share. This helps us reach more listeners.